Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Wednesday, January 20th. So, pretty good performance once again for the indices. Just to kind of round out the numbers here, S&P finished up almost 1.4% for the day. Q's finished up 2.3% for the day. IWM was a little bit of a laggard for the day, up 40 basis points. TLT flat for the session. Gold up 1.6% for the day. Big move in silver as well, up 2.7%, and then a big move down in the VIX, which I have highlighted there, down about 7% for the day. So let's talk about some of these moves. We'll get into some of the sectors too, but a couple observations for the day. So number one, Netflix, right? So big move for Netflix today, up 16%. Above recent resistance, or this, no, maybe not recent resistance, but the last couple of years of resistance, which was right around this 570 level, call it, maybe if you want to go a little bit higher to 575. So what does this tell me, right? How does this speak to me, this move in Netflix? Well, I think it got some people caught off guard, right? And considering the move after the open too, from where this thing opened up around what 566 and closed 20 points higher, got up to 593. It tells me that maybe people were a little bit under positioned in Netflix, and I think kind of the story too in the FANG stocks, right? I think the FANG stocks, including myself, I have not been a fan of this group of stocks. I think there's better places, momentum in different areas of the market. However, that being said, we can change very quickly. This was a video that I sent out to members earlier in the day, like, just saying, hey, I haven't been a fan of the FANG stocks. Okay, so what? Now that they're kind of waking up a little bit, and maybe they'll run a little bit into earnings, being that there's been under positioning in them. I think over the last couple of months there's been profit taking, or there was a lot of money in some of these names, so you could call them, from where they were a couple months ago, a little bit overcrowded. So money has been taken out of those names. Clearly, they've been underperformers. If you look at the majority of them, like an Amazon over the last 3 or 4 months, right? This isn't like rocket science, but that Amazon has basically just been going sideways. Meanwhile, things like IWM have been just going out up and to the right. So perhaps maybe a little rotation back into this group. Now, where do we think, before I kind of move on to some of the other names, where do we think Netflix could go? Well, top of value for the year, looking on the weekly chart, and again, we're halfway through the week, so this is a developing bar for the week. But as long as Netflix remains above 557, maybe this could really start to kind of break out and start to see some money being added back. Once you have a positive quarter like this, it really kind of changes the look and the feel of the name. And if you look at previous earnings, right, this is different, right? Look at the last 10 quarters for Netflix, right? We haven't seen a quarter where it's moved up 16%, in a couple years. So, yeah, we'll see where this goes. And if we start to look at, we'll take a look at the FANG charts first. Even we'll start with Apple, which isn't officially a FANG stock, but Apple reports next week. Take a look at what it's doing here. You got the first close this month, right? The month of January, above value. So you have a level to trade in Apple of 130. Apple saw a lot of call activity, right out of the gate today. So, I would, I'm leaning towards this, looking like it's going to continue to rally into their earnings print, right? Which again is next week, 127. If we want to go look across some of the other names within this group, Google got a big move. Again, didn't really get, maybe this one barely closed above the January value area. So again, it's in the cards for these things to run. Amazon did close above value. There is a version point of control that this thing is headed towards, up at 3285, which I think this gets to this week. And then we'll kind of see what Amazon does. But Amazon reports not this week, but next. But sure, what's to say, this name couldn't run, considering it really hasn't done much, right? I will have to redraw this line. So let's remove this, and we could put a trend line, somewhere in here, if Thinkorswim will allow me to draw it. All right, so we've got this line, and we're above value, but really, one day is not a trend, right? So we're going to have to see some follow through activity. But if you want to trade this thing now, remember we've had a couple of these false breaks, really, really strong days, and then completely gives it back. So I would wait to see how this thing handles the 3285 1 hour VPOC being taken out, and we'll see if this Netflix really not Netflix, this Amazon really wants to get going, right? And and if it doesn't get going, for a run into earnings, which I would be potentially watching that. If not, maybe we'll set up for an earnings trade. So we'll be watching that. And by the way, nice volume on this. By the way, if this video is blurry at all, it just means YouTube hasn't finished rendering it. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. I don't know if they slowed something down. When I send out the videos as soon as I get them, as soon as Netflix, not Netflix, YouTube, really have Netflix on the brain. When YouTube is done rendering, I send it out. But there's a high def version of it too, which takes another like 15, sometimes 20 minutes to render. So if you see it blurry, just stop watching and it'll be ready in about another 15 or 20 minutes. All right, that's the procedure that they have. I don't control that. Next, Facebook. Facebook I think is a tougher trade, even though it already has been a nice trade, right? A bounce on the 200-day moving average, moved from 250 to 268. Another name too. So I'm not sure if I'm really bullish on this one, but Nvidia is another name that I think is getting interesting. Take a look at this sideways action, right? It had a false break down, false break up, but remember this level, 537, right? We closed at 534 because that's the top of value for this month. And then also, if you back this out to the weekly chart, a move. Notice we have not had a closing bar in January above value. So really, this 537 is an important level to watch. So we've talked about this name before a couple weeks ago, and it's important to kind of wait for these closing bars above value. Unless you really have a fundamental view on the stock. I'm more of a watching levels and technical trader. So I'm going to wait for this thing to break above 537, call it 538. If you want a little bit more room, 540, and then we'll see what this thing does. But I think it pays to pay attention to this name because it is so coiled up. Remember, if you don't know what coiling means, when you've got three moving averages wrapped around one another, usually once the price starts to break away from that coiling of the moving averages, it's usually a decent move is coming, right? So that's what I would be watching for. Also, another name too. I've got a lot of names to talk about in this video. So if you like to talk about charts and names, Square is just kind of sitting here consolidating. So again, I don't have a position on in Square in my trading account. I've got it on in the TTG trend portfolio, which is more of like a long-term trend portfolio. But I don't have anything on in the trading account, and I'm watching. I've got an alert set for 233, and we'll wait until that triggers. So again, part of this game of trading and doing well at it is setting a lot of alerts and just waiting until they trigger, right? And that's kind of what I'm watching. But this is starting to really get compact too. Notice the volume too. Really kind of get small here. So it tells me that there's not a lot of selling going on right now. There's not a lot of buying going on. But once we start to see some buyers come into this thing, I think that considering the price action is getting pretty tight here too, we could see a nice move in Square. So those are a couple names I'm watching. I also wanted to talk about the other big group. If you go back to my spreadsheet, right, the home builders really were strong today, up 4%. I'm not sure what the story was. I saw that there was a positive analyst note about the whole group, but unless there was some other story, tomorrow we do get home data. We get for tomorrow. We do get housing starts and building permits, so that I would assume that will be a catalyst. But I mean, look at the move out of here. One of the things that we talked about in the weekend member video was XHB, which is the home building ETF. There's only about 20-25% of this ETF is actual home builders, right? Let me just check that because I want to make sure I'm giving you accurate information. By the way, everything that we are going through in this video is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. But if we go through and we look at the description, so it's kind of interesting. I think anyway, to see what groups, right? This is called the home building ETF. Or the home builder ETF. The ITB is called the home building ETF. But yeah, there's only 27% home builders in this XHB. It's a lot of building materials, retail, home furnishings. Believe it or not, those are the ones that have been outperforming, right? We saw this breakout start last week, and we've got some follow through. If you look at ITB, which again, ITB is the home construction ETF. Sorry about that. If you look at this ETF, this is a lot more home builders. Sometimes that's a positive thing, sometimes that's a negative thing, right? Over the last week and a half, that's been a little bit of a negative thing, as more of the home construction type names and retail names have done better. But if you look at some of the performers, this close to the highs of the session, up at 61, and we'll see if this wants to continue to kind of break higher. That would be great to see. Different groups like this kind of take the ball and run with it. All right, so if you look at some names like DHI, which is kind of my favorite of the group, Lennar is also one of my favorites, Toll Brothers, all looking quite similar. One of the names that I was watching too is this BLDR, right? This is Builders First Source. Not there yet if you're looking for a name to kind of get going out of this group. So again, pretty exciting. We'll see how the home data comes out for tomorrow for this group, but I like to see different groups like this participate. Same thing with the FANG stocks. I got a couple questions as I seem to get this question every day about whether the market could sell off tomorrow. Of course the market could sell off tomorrow. Anything could happen on a day-to-day basis, right? I don't have a crystal ball. But what I think is particularly strong, just being objective and being observant of what's going on in this market, I think that, the under the radar or under the hood rotation in this bull market that we have is pretty cool, right? I mean, I think that's very representative of a strong bull market. You have a couple days where one group of stocks leads, for a couple days. Then a couple other groups take over and they run to the upside. Then they digest. They pass the baton to another group. I mean, it's probably that's something really, really strong, right? It's what's not strong is generally when only a few stocks tend to kind of are super strong. But as long as you're pretty quick and you're not married to having to trade the same positions over and over, this market is pretty fun, I think. So, rather than try to anticipate when we're going to get that day where the market sells off, in my opinion, what I try to do is trade smart, take profits, trying to take a little bit more off the table when the market rips. Trying to stay in this trend for as long as it lasts, right? That's, in my opinion, like if you're a trend follower or trend trader, staying in this market for as long as you can is what earns you money. Trying to guess when you're going to get volatility, that's not going to help, right? If you could play that game, right, and try to pick the day where there's going to be volatility, but odds are that's not really set up to make a lot of money, by doing that. So trying to stick with the trend, and of course being smart, right? Taking profits as we go, and realizing to kind of stay open and objective to what some of the groups are that are going to that are possibly outperforming and right in front of us. So that's what has me excited. A lot of option activity. Just to talk about a few names for the day. I mean, I could talk about probably 15, 20 names, more names about that's option activity. One that caught my attention is this team, right? A name that you probably haven't heard that it's been pretty quiet. Started to see some call buying in this one. So this is in value. 225 is your support. And maybe look for this thing to kind of break out of this little consolidation and get to the top of value, 245, which is about $15 in front of it. So I think that one's interesting. This apps, couple names. Oh, let me go through. Net also saw some call buying today. This was a name I got long last week. I got a little frustrated and got out of it last week too. I think I took one target on it and then took the trade off on Friday. But a lot of calls went up in this one. So maybe look for this thing to get to 86, maybe digest around 86, and who knows, maybe take another leg higher. Pins. This has been a name that's frustrated a lot of people. However, sometimes you just kind of have to stay with it. Some call buying in this one did close above value. We'll see if this one can actually get going. I don't have a position in this one. UAA, I did take a trade in this one earlier. I like the trend. A lot of call buying in this one. So looking to see if this one can get first target would be up at 19. I did not get my first target in this one today. A couple solar names too. JKS made a nice move today. This one saw some call buying yesterday. See how it responds to this top of value, 67.20, right? And it's a sideways chart. Maybe look to take another target at 70, right around 71, and then see if this thing can kind of come out of the sideways action. All right, other trades for me, ATVI from yesterday. Apps I got out of, although apps may have more to go to it. Digital Turbine. I'm also long in this in the TTG trend portfolio, but real nice move up 11% for the day. I mentioned ATVI, which was a name I got long yesterday. Took a target in this one. I got out of Skyworks. Interesting. I think that was the right thing to do. So again, going back to like how to trade this market, one of the things is trying not to be like ridiculously greedy right now in this market. I was happy with, some of these moves are so fast and furious, but I got out of this at 167, was happy to do that at 10 o'clock in the morning. Real nice move. And semis, by the way, right? So not every group, like the breadth today was not like the strongest I've ever seen. If you look at some of these groups, the semis gave some back. Just as I said in the beginning of this video, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The semis are a little bit extended here, right? So let them come in and digest. Now, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if they're going to do that, but it would seem logical for maybe some money to rotate out of the super strong semiconductors and maybe go into a little bit of those FANG stocks, maybe go a little bit more into the home builders, right? And some of the other, names that I've gone through here a little bit. I'll give you a couple other examples. By the way, I tried day trading a couple things today. Just a reminder, every once in a while I try to trade a little bit of weekly calls. It doesn't work for me. So some people it works great for. Weekly calls, every once in a while I can get them to work really for a quick trade. I traded some Fastly, did not work. Just to make sure I talk about not only winners, because I also tried some Dash today. That didn't work. A couple false signals. Right, that's gonna happen, and it's a good thing I got out of this too, because here was what I was looking at, a break higher out of value. Very next bar went right back into value. I gave it a chance to kind of recover. My stop was 200. I took the stop at 200. So, take a look at that. Right, that was smart to take that. Right, and anytime I trade weekly calls, I'm fully aware that, when I take a trade that's very short term, I'm okay with losing 100% of the premium, right? I size it appropriately, right? So that basically means I'm never taking a big trade in the weeklies, right? That's how it's worked for me. I just think trading weeklies are that difficult. I make more money trading stock and trading, further out swing trades and options. But I'll take a shot in the weeklies every once in a while. STNE was also another position that this worked right off the bat. I'm not sure if I just got a little bit lucky on that one, but it took a target in that one. I think this thing can go to 87. All right, and just a couple. I feel like I'm missing some of the names that we saw option activity. JD was another name, but yeah, lot of buying in the home builders. Like I said, KBH saw some calls. IQ saw some big calls. Chinese name that's gotten beaten up. Seems like it's recovering now. JD saw some calls. There was the Fastly calls that kind of got me involved in that one. Was just basically looking to play momentum. Check out this name, CNR, another kind of like building materials type name. Cornerstone, zoom out a little bit. It's only a $12 stock or $13 stock. This is in retracement mode. Next stop could maybe be $15, but a lot of calls in that one. Right, and a few others there on the list too. Our weekly watch list, how's that performing? Pretty good, up 3.2%. As I try to mention that for this particular trade, because I do buy all these on Monday, right? My philosophy is that I've been putting together this weekly watch list, and it tends to outperform. And if I'm putting in the work, someone gave me the idea, said, hey, why don't you buy this list and hold it for a week and see how it does? So I've been doing that for a while. That's been working out pretty well. That trade is up since we started this trade in August. It's up, decently over 50%. So, and we continue to do that every week. If you haven't heard me talk about that before, here's the 3 programs that we do at the Tribeca Trade Group. So trading account is mostly what I focus on. You could see the breakdown of that. You hear me talk about the TTG trend portfolio, right? We've got, I think, 33 names in that portfolio. I will look to rebalance that this week if I can, if not in the beginning of next week. And that is more of a longer term portfolio where I'm riding the trend in many names. And then we have our weekly watch list trade, right, where I just mentioned. So again, outperforming again for the week quite nicely. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow.